Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we will continue our discussion of Freemasons for Dummies by Christopher Hodab.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have our usual crew of three. We have Very Worshipful Brother David Colbeth from King Solomon Lodge number 60, Worshipful Brother Stephen Chung from Prince Charles 153 in Kelowna, British Columbia, and I'm Matt Appel, and I'm a member of Mill Creek number 243 here in lovely Montlake Terrace, Washington. And so we're continuing our discussion of the Freemasons for Dummies book. Today is going to be, knowing us, probably part one of a discussion of chapter 1 of the book, which is Lodges, Aprons, and Funny Handshakes, Freemasonry 101. At least that's what it's called in my edition of the book. We discovered as we were preparing for this episode that each of us has a different edition of the book. So I have the first edition, and David has the second edition, I think, and Stephen has the third edition. So there may be some funny little translation bits there. But I will say, I when someone asks me what Masonry is, that is consistently one of the things I feel badly about, is I really don't have a great elevator speech for it. It took him, 10 pages to do it, so I don't feel too bad. But yeah, what did you guys think of his thoughts here on what it is that we have dedicated so much effort to?
Yeah, to your point, I remember years ago when Sam Roberts was Grandmaster, he had put together kind of a paragraph-ish of a few sentences of what Masonry is, and he encouraged us all to have our own elevator pitch. And I never memorized his, never really developed my own either. But I do agree that in a few words, a symbol of truth, morality, and brotherly love. The square encompasses that, but essentially that's what we are as Masons.
Yeah, I've never really nailed down one particular elevator speech either. I've always just said to people, Freemasonry is a journey of learning and self-discovery, really. And I can never really explain it fully, other than it's a lifestyle, right? And then they go, well, what do you mean by that? It's like, well, everybody's journey is individual, and we all learn at different paces, and different things come to us and are revealed to us at different times in our life. And I use an example of I've been doing certain lectures now for over 20 years, and pieces of those lectures I'm enlightened by at different times, and over the years it's been quite interesting as to when those are. But there's the old thing that it'll come to you when you're ready for it, and I guess I just wasn't ready before to learn that one piece, right? Even though I've been relaying it in way of a lecture for 20 odd years, right? You would think that I should know it. Well, I know it, but it hasn't had that personal impact until one particular point or another.
So when the student is ready, the master will appear.
Yeah, something like that. something like that,
I've heard it in the business world, success is the culmination of opportunity and preparedness. So, you're so successful. Well, yeah, but they prepared and prepared and prepared, and the opportunity presented itself. Yeah.
So he does have, at least on page 13 of my book, he does have a list of things of what is Freemasonry. Oh, it goes on page 13 through 14 of my book.
Yes, mine as well.
Yeah,
Um,
mine's actually on page 11, but let's go through that list, right?
So yeah, that's usually when someone asks that fraternity is definitely one of the first words that comes out of my mouth of, and then I have to say not a college fraternity, but a group of men kind of fraternity.
Yeah.
So it's
You know, yeah, and not just any fraternity. We are bound by the obligations that we take along the 3 degrees that we go through, right? The next one there, Masonic laws, rules and legends, customs originate in the ancient charges, uh, the rules of those craft guilds, right? I don't know about that one myself, how to explain that one, but
Well,
yeah. I don't think I would bring that up if somebody were asking me what masonry is.
no, no. But here we go. Freemasonry teaches lessons of social and moral virtues based on symbolism of the tools and language of the ancient building trade, using the building of a structure as a symbol for the building of character in men. Okay. The first part of that makes sense to me, to use as an explanation, right?
yeah,
Are these the same order as you guys have in your book?
so far, yeah. I underlined that, skipping down a couple lines, that we're petitioners who are found to be morally and mentally qualified or admitted. And, as much as we say that, I think the 6 steps helps to do that, but, are we really validating the morality as part of their entrance? Was my morality really validated?
Good question. Because how do you do that?
How do you do that? Unless you've known someone for years.
Hmm.
Which there may be some implications in that sentence you just said, right? That was kind of the, or what we include in I don't know if they do it in BC, but in Washington, our traditional approach is a document that's part of the 6 steps process. I almost said process.
Uh-oh, the Canadians wearing off on you.
And in that traditional approach, it talks about how, yeah, if traditionally you come into masonry through a friend or a family member or somebody, coworker or a community member, somebody you've known for years, as you said, Matt. And that's what the 6 steps is designed to do, is to really help a person that come into masonry that nobody knows, has no connection with, and to develop that true connection and long-term understanding. And so it's interesting how when lodges, they'll work through the 6 steps in a month or a few months, even a couple of months, and think, oh yeah, I know this guy. Do you? Do you really know him? When I'm talking to, as you say, a seeker, when I'm talking to a prospect about masonry and they're inquiring, I say everybody has their own litmus test on how they'll determine when they're ready to sign someone's petition. Personally, one of my tests is, would I trust you to be at home with my family when I'm not there?
Hmm,
And
that's a good one.
if I feel like I can trust you to be at home, or if I'm out of town and something happens, can I call you and say, hey, I can't get there. Can you please go and be with my wife and kids? If I would trust you to do that, then I would trust you with secrets and other parts of the masonry.
Yeah, I guess my only issue with that is I usually trust everybody until they give me a reason not to, right? I'm very trusting that way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so until I'm given a reason to doubt,
Sure.
I'm very open that way. But
And,
that's a great way to think about it.
mm-hmm. And not only morally ready, but mentally qualified. I mean, I appreciate that you talk about how you require them to do ritual memorization, and we say we do, but it's always funny to me how we get these guys in and then they can't do their proficiency work. Well, if we said you had to memorize stuff and you had to do that as part of your seeking, a part of your 6 steps.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta memorize stuff, but don't worry about it. It's not too bad.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Well,
I don't expect
it,
somebody to be perfect, but
yeah, we don't expect somebody to be perfect, but I absolutely will not accept a petition unless they can commit 2 paragraphs to memory and repeat them to me fairly well,
yeah,
right? Because I tell them straight up, if you can't do these 2 paragraphs, and you can pick them, there's 4 on the page. You can pick any 2 you want, but if you can't do that, you're not going to handle the 6 pages coming your way. And that's just in the first degree.
yeah,
Right? So, but yeah, we absolutely do hold strong to that one now, because we have had many guys in the past come petition and not come back because they couldn't do the memory work. Well, what's the point of having them come in, spend their hard-earned money to join something of this stature, and to only drop it because they couldn't do the memory work? Wouldn't
yeah,
you rather know that up front?
yeah.
You know, so um, I do like the last one that's on the list here in my book, anyways. Is Freemasonry teaches Masons to be tolerant of the beliefs of others, and to regard each man as their equal, deserving both their respect and their assistance. Right? To be tolerant of others is so important these days, and to regard each man as an equal, right? Because the one thing is, after every meeting, we meet on the level, and once our lodge is closed, your title, where you've been and whatnot, is no longer considered. We're just brothers, right? And as the old saying, from the ranks you rose, to the ranks you shall return, right? And so I think that one there is so important, um, so important. We're all equals. Got to remember that.
I'm reminded of. I'm dragging us off topic, but the our minister one time was giving us a sermon on it was on the love your enemies, that whole all that foolishness. And he said, notice it doesn't say tolerate your enemies. Imagine you're going to bed and you turn to your wife and you say, I tolerate you, dear. No, no, that would not go well. It's not the same thing. It just every time I hear the word tolerate now, that's the what springs to mind.
Yeah. But is there somewhere in there too? You don't have to like them. You have to love them, but you don't have to like them. I don't know.
I was listening to another podcast which shall not be named. Okay, it was the Masonic Roundtable, and they did an episode about brotherly love and about um, it wasn't even necessarily about conflict in the lodge. It was about how brotherly love manifests itself in different aspects and stuff. I thought it was really interesting. So yeah, but don't listen to that. Listen to us. Don't avert your eyes.
I, I I'm sure those guys don't listen to us, and so I don't have any concern about that. I thought, oh, it popped up on my YouTube feed last week. I thought, oh, I should just watch one of the shows. And within the first 15 or 20 minutes, I felt like I was on a game show or something. I don't know. They're doing so many little odd, like I think it was a tarot of the week or something, like tarot card of the week, whatever. And they had the music, and I thought, what are we on, a game show? This is late night. I mean, I guess it works for them, and they whatever. It just was funny. I mean, they'll probably ridicule us for doing Freemasons for Dummies, but whatever. It was interesting.
To go over and start listening to them.
Sorry guys, if anybody happens to listen, I'm not. It just was interesting. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no. Oh yeah, the book. That's it. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. I also find one of the things that I try to explain to people who are new to masonry or are asking questions is that there's not a whatever Grand Lodge of the United States or Grand Lodge of the world or whatever, that every given that the UGLE gets some difference, there's still there's no just because it's that way in Tennessee doesn't mean it is here or in Japan or in South Africa. Every place is different, and every, within certain parameters, we're all sovereign groups. And I that's hard to explain sometimes.
What do you mean, Matt? You've not received the 66th degree yet?
Apparently not. I'm not high enough level to know the truth.
Yeah, well, that leads to the last line in What Do Masons Do? Still an important mission of the Masonic Lodge is to make new Masons, and it's accomplished by conferring degrees, which brings us to the fact that there are only 3 degrees in Freemasonry, and in conferring the 3 degrees, the ceremonies a new member must go through are called degrees. And I love telling them all, no matter what crazy things you think are about to happen, remember, we've all survived it. We've all been there. We've all done that, right? And, just to try and put their minds at ease, because no matter how much homework they've done, they're still, I don't know what's about to happen to me, right?
Right. And I tell people who are interested not to do the homework to come into it with as fresh a mind as possible. So
which is important. I think if they can do that, that's the best way, right? No expectations, The only expectation I put on them is that they show up with a carrot sticking out of their chest pocket, and I tell them it's not for the goat. It really isn't. There's a whole other purpose behind it, and then it isn't until their night of initiation that I reveal that reason to them, right? Which I can't reveal here, or everybody I talk to now moving forward would know, right? But it is very, very, very important, right? So, yep, I still do that. Yeah, so here we go on the degrees. The degrees are a progression and must take place in proper order. Each builds on the previous one, and the degrees are connected by the story of the construction of Solomon's temple, right? Which I think is enough to give them an idea, and that they know that they build on each other, right? Which is also another thing, because when we talk about the memory work involved and whatnot, and I tell them about the 6 pages coming up, I said, but don't worry about it, because in the 2nd degree, you just say all the stuff I said before, but with these additions, right? Right. So the fact that it's only 3 pages, after that,
Yeah, I didn't read ahead or check it all out so much that I thought the story of King Solomon's temple and everything they were teaching me was true.
Right.
It's not
a real.
It's symbolic.
It was like my first. I got that later. My first year, I was like, "Well, that's just an analogy. What?"
And the parts that are based on the Bible, you make you wonder: were there that many people involved in building this thing? What was the population of Israel at the time?
Mm-hmm.
And now, 15 years later, I think, well, what's the significance of those numbers? Now I want to know.
Well, I like that they've touched on it here. Depending on the lodge, like this is the 3rd point in the conferring the degree section. Depending on the lodge, advancing from one degree to the next can take days, weeks, months, or even years. Right now, generally, we try to get them through within a year or 2, but it can take years. I mean, I know brothers that were traveling salesmen, and back in the day when everything was communicated month to year, there were no ritual books, there were no codex, there were none of that, and so I imagine it did take years for brethren to get through the degrees. Just to be able to do their proficiencies would have taken forever and a day, right? But it leads to the thing: don't be in a hurry. It's a journey.
Yeah, I think when we Sorry, Matt. But I think when we move a guy forward because he maybe is having some difficulty memorizing, I think we're doing him a disservice in that just give him some time. Keep at it. Keep at it. I think they'll get better. They will get better. And maybe at some point there's just a law of diminishing returns, but they'll generally, the more you practice, the more you practice. And I find it seems like a lot of the guys that I see that quote, I'm air quoting here, can't do the proficiency, they're really not doing the work at home. Is
Right.
what I really suspect.
But do you guys also provide coaches?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, when I say at home, I mean outside of, I mean, I know one of the guys that I know a guy that, he was working on his degree and he got a certificate in uh, project management. He's done all this educational work and others. So he's obviously able to learn and memorize things to be able to take tests and do those kind of things. And so I think it's just a matter of priorities, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like guys who say, well, I don't have time. Masonry is not something you find time for, you make time for.
Yeah.
Right. And it's no different than the proficiency.
Yeah.
You got to make time for it. If you don't, then it's just not a priority for you, right? Because we do the things we prioritize, that's for sure.
I wrote in the margin true proficiency. Is proficiency just the memorization of words?
No.
I
Proficiency is repeating them, telling the story back to the lodge in a way that we believe you actually understand what you're saying, and that you've absorbed and comprehended the experience that you had.
But again, that's proficient in that memorization work. But what makes an apprentice proficient? We talk about what we just talked about in our last few shows, the cardinal virtues, so cardinal virtues. Are we even, but is he displaying those 7 cardinal virtues?
Liberal arts and sciences.
What's that?
7 liberal arts and sciences.
Liberal arts and sciences. Thank you. Sorry.
4 cardinal virtues. 7 liberal arts and sciences.
Okay. So, but is he displaying the virtues? Is he displaying the 4 cardinal virtues? Is he displaying those elements that he was just taught in the first degree? Just like we say, is the guy moral when he wants to join? How do we know he's moral? How do we know he's proficient in his degree? And one of the things he recommends here in the book is that maybe some lodges, they have him do a research paper and present the research paper, which may or may not tell a guy whether he's proficient or not. But should we test a man against what we have told him he should be tested against, which is the ritual work and the lectures, right?
Good point. Things that make you go,
With David Colbeth.
Yeah, I don't know. I steal a lot of ideas from people too, so I'm sure I heard it somewhere.
Yeah. Well,
Probably
being that a
Sam.
member must prove his proficiency in his degree before moving up, proficiency is usually is accomplished by memorizing a portion of the ritual and reciting it in front of the other members. Some lodges require the member to present that paper, but so for us, we really, when we do our coaching, right, our coaches do things a little bit differently. When you see a brother do his proficiency for a particular degree, nowadays with the coaching that we do, you would think he wrote that. You know that he understands the words he's saying, that it has meaning to him, and you can tell by the way he presents it back to us, right? Whereas before, back in the day, it could have just been a recording that was being, regurgitated verbally. And so, like one of our coaches, he says, when a guy is stumbling on a particular paragraph or section, it's usually because he doesn't comprehend what he's saying. And so we actually stop the process. We analyze the words that are being said, and does he understand this? And then we delve into what part we need to, right? So that he gets the meaning or he gets the understanding. And I'll tell you, it's made a huge difference. And I truly believe that these guys that are coming through the degrees now and coming through our mentorship program are truly understanding what it was they experienced, and not just reiterating the words they were told to memorize.
So it's interesting. We got into a little discussion here about proficiency and that sort of stuff because and that there's a paragraph in the book, obviously, or it's a checklist in the book. I am 98% sure I've heard Chris Hodap talk on a podcast or two, and I am 98% sure that he was a one-day, whatever they call it, Blue Lightning's one-day conferral guy. So he probably did not do these things. I'm not saying he hasn't since, and I think he's been master of his lodge, and he's obviously a Masonic luminary, but not all Masons do these things.
Yeah,
this is true.
he's an Indiana Mason. They do a lot of first 1-day degrees. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of those things being done, but I've never experienced it. I don't know very many Masons that have experienced that, but it's not widely done here in our jurisdiction, anyways.
Yeah, there was a period there where for some reason it seemed to be catching on here, and then all of a sudden it came to a screeching halt. And I've only heard of one in the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years even where they've done it. They did one up here. It was a bunch of guys who had joined a clandestine lodge thinking they were in real Masonry and wanted to join the Grand Lodge of Washington instead. And so they decided, you're close enough. And so they did a 1-day conferral for them. Yeah, it's not as, like I said, there was a period there where they did it a couple times in a year, and yeah, but that seems to have stopped since. Anyway, so I feel like we're sort of wrapping up for this section of the book, but there are more pages to come in chapter 1, so we will have to have a second discussion. As usual, as I always mean to say in the beginning about contacting us, because I feel like I start wrapping up and people go, oh, okay, and then they tune out. So I should start saying in the beginning, hey, please contact us, whatever, Facebook, email, etc. We'd be happy to hear from you and hear your thoughts on the book and on our wonderful erudite ramblings. And
don't forget, I think this will come out before then, Conference of Grandmasters. If you're going to be in town in Seattle, we will be there, or be square. Well,
yes,
or squared, or plum.
I think they're still looking for volunteers to help out with some things too. So, but the podcast, at least 2/3 of us, I think, will be there, and we will. If you're walking down the hallway, maybe you'll have a chance to appear on an episode of the pod for a small donation. No, just kidding. But with that, on behalf of Steve and David, I want to say thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon on the Working Tools podcast. Goodbye.